Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for finally. I don't even know how long it's been since I finally got time to do an actual preview for a game. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for joining us for a Manchester City versus Chelsea preview. Of course, there's a lot of other stuff to talk about. Mbappe has essentially told PSG he is leaving. What could that mean for us? Apparently, they are very much interested in Victor Osimhen. Could Osimhen choose them over us? Were we even in pole position in the first place? Were we even going to get him anyway? Because we might not be willing to pay the wages that he might demand. So we'll get into that. Some more injuries, which is obviously brilliant news, as always. And of course, a huge game, but at the same time, a worrying game. Because and even though we drew them 4-4 last time, and it was one of the best games we've had all season, because it's away, and I don't know, things have just, it's not even that long ago. When did we play that City game, like in November or something? It's not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, but for some reason, maybe I'm just being too pessimistic, but there is not a single part of me that can envisage us pulling something like that off again tomorrow. And like that is only a draw, let alone bloody winning. There is no chance, in my opinion, how that's happening. I mean, hopefully I'm being proven wrong, but I just don't see it happening. It's a depressing time. Pep Guardiola already bigging us up. Oh, we're one of the most difficult games they're going to play for the rest of the season. We are so great. I'm like, mate, who are you kidding? Either you are lying to everyone or you've not watched us play in God knows how long, because we are not good at anything. Not keeping the ball, not defending, not attacking. We're not very good at anything. But at the same time, it's a bit like Janaku says here. It's a bit of a free hit. Ollie, first of all, thank you for being back on. It's been a minute, so I'm glad to have you back. Do you see it like Janaku does? Is it essentially a free hit, and therefore the pressure isn't actually as big as usually City away provides? Because in other seasons, when you're fighting for top four, when you're fighting for the title, Man City away is a deciding game. Now, if we lose, unless we get absolutely battered, which we might do, but unless we get absolutely battered, will anyone bat an eyelid? Will you bat an eyelid?
Not really. I mean, first of all, just want to say, hi Loz and hi Charlie and hi chat. It's been a while and it's nice to be back. Yeah, it's a tough one. It feels like on the face of it, like you say, it is going to be a bit of a free hit. The players aren't going to feel the pressure, and maybe that helped them last time, but maybe they will feel a little bit of pressure from what they managed to do last time, and because no one was really expecting that either. So it can kind of go both ways. I feel like at the moment with Chelsea, we kind of play to the strength of our opponents a lot. Like we were really good against Villa, who are a good side, and then we were a lot worse against Palace, a relatively poor one. So I guess at the moment we're sort of playing to the strength of our opposition a bit, and of course, in theory, that means we'll be really good because Man City are arguably the best team in the world. But it doesn't always work like that. I think we'll have to do a job not to get embarrassed tomorrow. To be honest, because I think just we've now hit that portion of the season. You've got title race City, fully, have gotten going. They're probably going to win every game between now and May. So if we can get anything from the game, it'll be a real blessing.
That's literally it. And I mean, you've touched on it there. Not only are Man City in title race form, but also they've got Kevin De Bruyne back, and an unbelievable Kevin De Bruyne. And the miss compared to them not having him early in the season, I don't know, is it like, 12 goal contributions in his last, 7 games? It's unbelievable. It's genuinely
just another level, isn't he?
Exactly. And I mean, I seen an interview when he made his comeback at Newcastle a few weeks ago. And he even said post-game that essentially the injury helped him a little bit to almost like free his mind up from how busy the schedule is at Man City, from how, almost saturated they were with winning, obviously having just won the treble, but because he missed out on the first half of the season. The longer you're out for, then you want to go back into training, want to give it everything, want to go in games. And then you see him come on in that Newcastle game, and he literally changed the game on his own. And Chelsea haven't had a player like that could do that since Eden Hazard. Like, not even close to having a player like that since Eden Hazard, if we're being totally honest with ourselves. I was going to get to Charlie, but Charlie will be back in 5 minutes. So we'll stick to Ollie for now. Let's get on to this topic that we need to discuss as well. Victor Osimhen. Now, what has got this whole story going? Yesterday, the news came out by, I think it was David Ornstein or whoever broke the news initially, that Mbappe has told PSG that he will be leaving at the end of the season. He had obviously his contract runs out. He would have had an option, but he's choosing not to make use of that option. And now, according to Nizar Kantela and other reports, do I have another one here? I've got David Ornstein as well, but Nizar worded it a bit more interestingly, saying PSG essentially are major contenders in the race for Victor Osimhen. Chelsea have long had other targets in mind and are still sounding out alternatives in the market, as well as reports. Relax with Hazard comparison. I didn't compare anything. I'm just saying that De Bruyne has the kind of impact that only Hazard had for us, and no one else even comes close. Not even like.
Do you wonder what they put in the water in that that few years in Belgium, don't you? To create phenomenal footballers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is a bit unbelievable. And they've got a few others coming through as well, like Jeremy Doku, obviously, and a few other absolute top young Belgian players. But there's also been reports that Chelsea have a certain unwillingness to pay many, if any, players over their 100 to 150,000 pounds a week wage structure. How do you see this going? Do you think this Mbappe situation will have any effect? Do you think PSG's interest will be a deciding factor in whether Chelsea do or do not get Osimhen? Obviously, Osimhen, I think throughout the African Cup of Nations, has said things like he knows what his future is, but he first wants to finish the season with Napoli and then focus on other things. But to me, it's like, if he's truthful in saying that, unless it's only like he and his mind kind of knew, if he's truthful in saying that, there is no way it's us, in my opinion, because there is no way you are choosing Chelsea before you know whether we will be in a European competition or not. So for me, him even saying that already a couple of weeks ago without this PSG interest made me a lot less confident in ever getting him. Now, it's completely besides the point that I'm still not 100% sure whether I even want him for the money. Like, obviously, if you gave him to him for free, I'd be buzzing. But considering how much he will cost us, it's not going to be easy. It is not going to be easy at all. And also, shout out Dams. So, Ollie, how do you see the whole thing? Like I say, does Mbappe leaving PSG affect it? Were we losing out anyway? Or do you still think we'll get him?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because this Mbappe news has kind of dropped a bit like a big bombshell. A lot of people were really thinking about whether Mbappe was going to move on this summer, whether he was going to, like you say, activate that option, or if something else was going to happen totally. But it seems from what we've seen and heard that he is definitely going to be leaving at the end of the season. He spoke to the owners of PSG, I believe, or at least they've been informed that he's going, and they have plans for that, obviously, to free up not both the massive amount of money that he takes up in their wages and all the rest of it, but also in who they're going to choose to replace him. And Victor Osimhen is one of the top strikers in Europe at the moment. I think nobody could really deny that. I think a lot of people might consider people saying that he had a poor AFCON a little bit reactionary. I think he's still a top player. It will affect us, I think, because whenever a big striker is on the market and multiple teams are interested, the player's head is always going to be turned potentially by wages, by European competitions, like you say, and like other things. I think it's probably going to depend a lot on how much we've spoken to his camp, how convinced the player is that that he is the one to lead the line and fill that gap at centre forward as well, because that's the other thing that I would consider. PSG are stacked at striker, really. I mean, after Mbappe, they've got Randall Kolo Muani and they've also got Gonzalo Ramos. So, to a certain degree, Osimhen would be competing with them. I don't think there would be much chance he'd be competing with someone like Jackson, as good as Jackson has been this season. He's coming in to be the main guy. I think someone like Randall Kolo Muani is good enough to push Osimhen. And it's just at that point, it's down to the player about whether he really feels that the Premier League is where he wants to be, or whether he wants to play in the Champions League more. A lot of players will put off Champions League and European football for, a project, so to speak.
The only problem is that there are also other English clubs interested in Osimhen that can provide Premier League and Champions League.
Yes, but it's also about whether they're willing to stump up the money for that. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen with the Ineos group and Manchester United. We don't know if not Man City. Don't know if Arsenal, who they're going to be getting at striker, although it looks more and more by the day like it's going to end up being Ivan Toney, which I think is going to be a great buy for them. So I think the whole thing is pretty uncertain in terms of Osimhen's future. I do believe in his head that he is probably decided. Whether that's to us or not, I don't know.
But do you think do you think any player would decide to come to us in the middle of the season with how our season is going? Do you think whoever they are, they would prefer to wait to be more sure?
Maybe,
Like I
but
say,
good
that's
players
kind
back
of part of what's
themselves.
making me think it can't be us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe, but good players back themselves. Like everyone has been saying for all this season and arguably all the last season as well. What do Chelsea need? We need a centre forward, an out-and-out goal scorer, a striker. Right above everything else, we need a world-class centre forward who's going to get us 20 goals a season. And Osimhen is that. He knows he's that. He knows we need that. And so he would walk in and be the main man, up top straight away. Whereas elsewhere, maybe he's not, or maybe there's a bit more competition. But I think if he walks into Chelsea in Cobham, he's the main man on day one, and that will matter a lot to footballers, because at the end of the day, when you have so much money, a lot of this stuff is driven by ego. So it's about that too. And again, back on the money side, it's an interesting one to see whether we'll actually be able to, not be able to, but want to pay his wages, as you've seen today and the last couple of days. We're reluctant to go above 100 to 150 K salary range as it is for now. We've got a few players above that, and I do wonder as well whether the potential departure of someone like Raheem Sterling, who obviously is on a lot of money this summer, might free up some of those wages. I don't personally see it as if there's no chance of us getting him. Because I do feel like we would pay his wages. I feel like for the right player, Feliciano, Egbali, Boehly, etc., would break the wage structure. Well, say break, but they would adapt the wage structure for the right superstar. But to be honest, you might have a better chance to a certain degree of trying to convince Mbappe than you might Osimhen. If we just chuck a bunch of wages at him, but I don't know. He'll want Champions League, won't he? So it's unlikely.
I think he just wants Real Madrid. I mean, he's been waiting for this move for God knows how long. And I mean, bloody the French president, Macron, is literally convinced Mbappe of staying in the past. Do you know what I mean? He wants Real Madrid. I don't think anyone is stopping that move from happening at this point.
And they're going to be a very, very scary team when he goes to Real Madrid. They've got Camavinga and Tchouaméni and Bellingham and Rodrigo and Rudiger and Militao and Vinicius. They've got all these incredible players. They're looking at another sort of super team, like we saw a little bit in sort of 2007, 2009-ish for Real Madrid when they first got all those big stars in years ago, and that carried them to obviously a three-peat in the Champions League. So, Mbappe will probably have his choice in terms of going there, but it still remains to be seen whether Osimhen is done or not. I from what I hear, it seems that it's sort of a bit of an open secret that obviously Chelsea want Osimhen, and we've been in contact with him a lot. But it just at this point, I think it's down to the player at the end of the day, and maybe that will be it will fall to his decision about where we are at the end of the season. I wonder if he kind of said he's decided in a way to maybe get the speculation off him for a while. That could be the case as well. Keep the press from speculating so much. But I don't know. It's going to be a good summer, I think.
It will be a good summer. There's another kind of side to have in mind here, because PSG, I mean, I know you mentioned Kolo Muani there, but they also have Gonçalo Ramos. So they kind of have two strikers already. And now it depends on how PSG sets up. I don't watch all of their games, but it is kind of public knowledge that Mbappe arguably prefers to play on the left than he does to play up front, which is also a bit of a Real Madrid issue, because what are they going to do with Vinicius if Mbappe isn't happy to play up front through the middle? But what I'm trying to say is you could argue that PSG could, I mean, Muani can play off the left, obviously, but that's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is because they have two strikers, you could argue they would be better off replacing Mbappe with a high-level winger rather than replacing him with a high-level striker. But at the same time, maybe they want a bit more of a... Just had to help. Charlie had to help the neighbours. Weird neighbours, he's gone. But maybe they want an experienced, more proven striker than the two that they've got. May well be the case. But I want to react to Darm's comment here. I mean, we all know Darm's is a bit mental when it comes to footballing opinions. But
we love you, Darms.
Yeah, we really do. He says, Ollie Watkins will cost less than half the price of Osimhen. Prem proven too, regardless how poor we are on the pitch, we can still attract these big names, whoever they play for. Now, I have a few disagreements with this, Darms. First of all, I firmly disagree with Watkins costing half of Osimhen.
Yeah, Villa would absolutely rinse us for every penny we have. They'd stick a 90 million price tag on him, wouldn't they?
At least, like, they might be in the Champions League. Like, and he's their main striker. Why on earth they could? I think they would even just tell us to go do one, not even give us a price. If I'm being totally honest, let alone.
The other thing as well is I don't think personally Watkins is as good as someone like Osimhen. Like,
no, of course.
Listen,
not.
one of the worst Chelsea teams
and Jackson.
Yeah, well, one of the worst Chelsea teams, arguably, like ever this season, last season. But especially this season, we've only played Villa recently. Of course, we had a very good game, but we made Watkins look bang average. And that is hard to do. Great. Like that is a difficult thing to do because he is a decent player. But we can't afford to have a player in our side who's going to be a passenger if you're going to be the main man striker. You need to.
I mean, Osimhen
to be able to take
responsibility,
but. Arguably so, but I feel like Osimhen's got that little bit more about him. I feel like he feels like he can take the game by the scruff of the neck a bit more than Watkins can. Now, of course, Watkins is Prem proven, like Dom says, and Osimhen's not. There are lots of pros and cons to lots of players we could be talking about as a potential another choice. What was it, João Pedro or Evan Ferguson from Brighton? You've got Ivan Toney, of course. There are other options around. And for the price, maybe Chelsea will eventually choose one of those, because what we've also seen is that Chelsea aren't, dead set on Osimhen. They're rightly, biding their time and looking at all the options. But it does feel a little bit like if we don't go in for Osimhen, we might lose him, because a lot of these times the players really will feel when a club is trying to sign them, and really when a player will want to feel wanted by a club. And if you're, looking around for other options, Gyökeres, that's another good option as well from Sporting. When you're looking at other options like that, a player doesn't necessarily always feel all that wanted. And so you can easily drive a player into the arms of another club who will say, yeah, we'll have you. We want you here, and it just remains to be seen whether Chelsea will stump up the money, as it were, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I do agree with Ashraf here that Gyökeres is the plan B. Obviously, Swedish striker, I think he's 25. Honestly, he's lucky if we still want him, because, Chelsea might consider putting him in a retirement home rather than actually buying him, because for us, he's obviously way too old, right?
Well, if he's 25, he's effectively nearly dead, according to our ownership group.
Literally.
That does frustrate me a lot. Like, apparently that's one of the reasons that we wouldn't go into someone like Ivan Toney, is because he's 28. Osimhen is 26.
We seriously need to be checking these owners' hard drives. Like, we seriously should.
I call it the Leonardo DiCaprio policy.
Our one way out of the 2032 agreement.
Yeah,
maybe those hard drives are our only hope. Do you know what I mean? JC says Sesko, sure, an option.
Yeah, he's decent, but is he as good as some of the elite options we're looking for? Maybe not.
Is he worse than Gyökeres? I don't think so, man. He's like basically half the age.
Yeah, he's
not really.
As well this season.
He's not, and also, like, we cannot, in my opinion, sign a player that 6 months ago went from the Championship to Portugal for 20 million. Like, we already did that with Enzo last year, who Benfica signed for 40 million or whatever, and 6 months later we spent 105. Like, we cannot be doing these types of stupid things. Like, it's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. I'm not sure he's at all in any way, shape, or form comparable to Timo Werner, but it is a tricky one. The one thing that's an issue about Osimhen, I mean, you mentioned it there for AFCON, but he's in general not having a particularly impressive season. Now, obviously, Napoli are the reigning Serie A champions, but they have changed the manager away from
Spalletti. They had Rudy Garcia, and then they bought Walter Mazzari in for the rest of the season.
Exactly. So it's look at the stats, right? 13 league games this season, 7 goals, 2 assists. Is that bad? No.
But would Jackson do any worse?
130 million?
No.
Absolutely. No. And this is Serie A we're talking about, right? Like, in the Serie A, you'd arguably need to be scoring 25 and 13 to be really considered amazing for the Premier League, right?
Christian Pulisic is balling out in Serie A, and that is all you need to know.
Ruben Loftus-Cheek has 5 goals in his last 5 games. Now, they're not all in the league, right? But Osimhen is 7 in 13. Like, do you know what I mean? 1 goal in 7 at AFCON with a team that got to the final. So, like, people talking about, I'll be honest, I was way too busy recently to watch any of the AFCON. and people say he didn't get any service. I'm like, all right, but they still made it to the final. Like, how bad can it really have been if you made it to the final?
That's what worries me as well, because like it feels like for so long we've been talking about Chelsea strikers like not getting enough service. We kind of need a striker who's going to do it with or without service, really, because that is the only way a Chelsea striker is going to succeed, is if they succeed in spite of the team, not because of it. So and as a result of that, we need someone who's going to be that main man, and an older option for that makes more sense because they're a little bit more calm, composed, they know what they're doing, they're a bit more headstrong, and they feel more assured in themselves. For my worst fear is we go back to Brighton for Evan Ferguson, because we would drop 100 million on him, he wouldn't even be ready, and it would just be another project player who we don't know if he'll hit the heights or not, and that would be the absolute worst case scenario for me.
Yeah, no, I do agree, and yeah, it's not ideal. And another thing to mention is Osimhen's best season has less goals than Quagliarella does. And Quagliarella, I think at the time, was 35 when he got that best season. I'm not saying that means Osimhen isn't good. Obviously, he is good. But how good is he? Like I said, it's the price.
That's 130 million good. And most people will tell you no. But that is the market now for a striker of his caliber. We're going to be overpaying because every club that we've gone to for any big target, we've overpaid for. We've kind of made our own bed here.
I would argue that his price is not necessarily that caliber of player is that price. I think that caliber of player is that price because all the ones that are better than him are unavailable. Because if a few others were available, someone like Osimhen wouldn't cost this much, in my opinion. But obviously, we'll need to see how. Obviously, he signed a new contract that reportedly has a release clause. So we're probably going to have to do the release clause, which Chelsea won't want to do anyway, because that has payment and amortization. Is very different to if you strike a normal deal. But yeah, it's a tricky one. Charlie, you're back. Thank you very much.
I'm back.
All good, mate. Thank you for coming on in the first place.
And we're discussing for being a good neighbour.
Yeah, thank you for being a good neighbour. That is good going to me.
I know it is.
We're discussing, obviously, Mbappe will leave PSG. How much of an impact on our chances of getting Osimhen do you think that will have? Or other factors like the wages or potentially the price, or maybe Osimhen's not particularly standout season. Are they going to be more decisive factors in us not getting him than PSG, maybe?
I don't think this really makes that much difference, to be honest. I think we all knew that it wasn't going to be a free run to Osimhen in the summer. We knew that was going to be the case. We knew that if Mbappe ended up staying at PSG, Real Madrid would probably be interested. If Mbappe leaves, we knew that PSG would look to go in for him. Whether we pay the money for Osimhen or not, someone else will pay it. But I don't really think it makes that. I don't think it dents our chances necessarily or makes much of a difference. Osimhen himself's already said that he's made up his mind. So really, we just have to wait for his decision to come out.
But players are so notoriously they go back and forth.
No,
they change their mind.
I just don't think this news that he's going to feature prominently on PSG's list to replace Mbappe is revelationary. We all knew that ages ago that he was going to be on the list. They're going to want a marquee signing, a big name to replace Mbappe leaving, and Osimhen is.
But is Osimhen even big enough for that?
Probably.
Biggest available.
In terms of what's available, yeah. Because I think if you look at the striker market now, it's poor. The striker market's not been good for a number of years. You're looking at basically...
I said this to Ollie when you weren't here, Charlie. The only argument to be made is, do PSG even replace him with a striker? Because they already have two really expensive other strikers. One costs 80 million.
Yeah,
and Gonzalo Ramos also cost 60 plus. The only thing before you keep going in terms of what Ashraf said, Osimhen before PSG's interest, I guess, said he knows where he wants to play. It's pretty obvious, the Premier League. I get what you're saying, but this, I know the news came out yesterday, but no one can tell me that PSG didn't at least have a contingency plan for.
Of course,
certainly Mbappe leaving.
They knew this ages ago. They would have known a long time ago. They've been preparing for ages for Mbappe leaving. So,
and there was reports that they already spoke to Osimhen in the past, as in not in the past, but as in recent weeks and months. So Osimhen could have meant PSG with that. He could. I'm not saying he did, but he could have done.
He could do. I just look at the market and it's poor, and that if we don't get Osimhen or Toney, then you're basically accepting the fact that we're not going to get a proven top-class centre-forward this summer. If you don't get Osimhen or Toney, then
that's when we spend 100 million on Evan Ferguson.
That's then when you're shopping in the next bracket down again, which we've all said is not what we need. But unfortunately, with the striker market the way that it is, if you miss out on either of those two players, then you are in the next bracket down. You're looking at a Benjamin Sesko, 40-odd million release clause. You're looking at players like Jimenez at Feyenoord. You're looking at, maybe an Evan Ferguson. For me, I wouldn't be touching Evan Ferguson just yet because,
The only other one that is sort of like I'm 50-50, he's like between those.
Oh, and you've got Gyökeres as well.
It's Gyökeres. I feel like he is he's not a tier below. He's like half a tier below. So like he could be an option depending on the price. I know he's an extremely good natural finisher. In the last couple of days, we've spoken about it and stuff in the group chat, and I said, well, I wasn't sure, but actually since I've had a look and I've watched him a few compilations of him, so I'm by no means the authority, but he does seem like a good player in terms of his natural finishing ability. It does feel like we need someone who does have that finishing ability.
It just look, for me, really, like, we need someone that moves the needle now. There's definitely one in Ivan Toney that would do that, and you could maybe say Osimhen would do that. Although I'm not as convinced about Victor Osimhen as a lot of people are. Look, if he arrived, would I be upset? Would I be complaining? No, but I don't think he's what we need, and I don't think he's as good as a lot of people make him out to be. At this point in time, Toney for sure would be the one that moves the needle straight away, in my opinion. But then if you're not getting him, look, you're as I said, you're shopping in the next tier down. It would be so Chelsea to go and spend 100 million euros on Gyökeres when you could have bought him for 20 million quid the season before, when he left Coventry.
But we know our owners do that. Like, look at Enzo.
Yeah,
Loz said this earlier.
Yeah, no, they do that. I mean, look, if I had to take a punt, I actually think the most likely scenario for us is I think we're going to end up with Gyökeres in the summer. I don't see us.
He's not even much cheaper than Osimhen, which is the mental.
I don't hate it though. He's probably he'd cost about the same as Toney, but I think Toney is more likely to go to Arsenal at this stage. If I remember.
Well, yeah, if they get themselves together and put an offer on the table.
First and foremost, Ivan Toney is too old for Chelsea. that's the biggest hold up. Let's be real here, right?
No,
yes,
I also think though, like there would
failed the Leo DiCaprio test.
No, but there would be for me. I think there'd be an exception. Like with certain players, that there would be an exception.
But why now? Why would they now all of a sudden make the exception?
Because we need someone now that's going to make a difference. We're 3 windows into a 4-window plan. And we haven't bought any players that are actually ready to perform at the top level straight away. Maybe that's what.
But if they changed their mind on that, surely they would have acted in January. I'm not saying necessarily on a striker.
No, well, maybe they would have.
The news did come out though that we were looking at adding some experience potentially to the squad. So I wouldn't rule it out totally. I just don't think it's all that likely.
Yeah, but I feel like to them, experience is getting someone like Osimhen who's 25.
Being 24.
Exactly. And the one thing I'll say on Gyökeres, right, and that's my main issue with it is, if he's that good, and yeah, I'm aware he looked amazing at Sporting. If he's that good, why was he in a championship until the summer? He's 25. Like, why didn't he move? Like, the championship is not like the middle of Kyrgyzstan.
Some players are late bloomers. I mean, look at Toney. Right?
Yeah, players are late bloomers. I mean, Drogba didn't turn pro till he was 22, 23. Didn't become professional till that age. Look, it does happen. I just feel
but
I get what you're saying.
But I just think it's a gamble.
Did make it professional. He was in the championship.
No, he was.
But so was Ivan Toney, like 2-3 seasons.
Ivan Toney hasn't been the whole time. I think for me, the thing with Gyökeres is like, is it how much of a gamble is it? I'm not saying he's not good, but it's like with anyone, it's a huge gamble signing someone based off. Well, in January it would have been based off 1 good 6 months in what is not regarded as a top 5 European league. If you're going to spend 100 million euros on a striker, right? that's had one good season in the Portuguese league. And look, the success rate from Portugal to the Premier League has been pretty decent, generally speaking, the likes of Luis Diaz, etc. But I look at it and I just think that's a massive gamble to sign someone for 100 million euros based off one good season in the Portuguese league. I just don't know if I need a bit more than that for me personally.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying earlier. I mean, like having since I've watched his ability, just in a few little bits and pieces, and I think he's good. Like certainly he's good, like phenomenal finisher. But can it translate to the Premier League? Can he make that jump? That's the key thing for me. Like, is he gonna? If he has a difficult adjustment, like Enzo had, for example, where he doesn't he shows glimpses, but he doesn't really quite get going for a little while. We might really suffer as a result. And as a striker, it's all about, a confidence thing, isn't it? We need someone, especially a striker, who's going to come in and score goals now and going to be the main guy now. And if you're not going to do that, we don't want you.
If you're not going to buy someone like that, you might as well keep Jackson. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And keep Jackson as the main guy because he's now had that season extra to be a bit more prepared. And I see people in the chat saying, "Oh, what a lazy analysis!" And have you ever watched a game of Gyökeres? Let me reply with a different question. Did you ever watch a game of Gyökeres at Coventry? Or consider the fact that 2.5 years ago, he went from Brighton. So at that point, he was either 22 or 23. When is his birthday? In June. So he would have been 22 at the time, or maybe just 23, right? He moved from Brighton to Coventry for 1.2 million. Again, transfer fees doesn't mean everything, but look at Brighton. Like the Brighton are probably the best producers of talented footballers within the Premier League. And they decided, he ain't cutting it. We're selling him to Coventry. Like selling him. They didn't loan him. They didn't have a buyback clause. No, they sold him to Coventry. And then he was there for 2 years, goes to Sporting. And yes, he has had a fantastic season. And if he costs 40, 50 million, it's a different conversation.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
But at 100 million, a player that's had 6 months and until then played championship football, and he's 25. Again, if he was 21, completely different scenario. But being 25, I just a bit.
My issue is like anyone can have a good season. It's like the big thing is, can you follow it up? And
I just feel. Look at this, by the way. If I go to injury history, not a single injury has ever been recorded.
Well, if he signs for us,
sign him up.
That'll be full. That'll be full at the end of next summer if he signs for us.
Literally.
But I think for me, I probably need a bit more of a sample size. I know beggars can't be choosers, and if we have to go for him, we have to go for him at this point. But realistically, I'd like to see him do another season because let's be real, as I said, anyone can have a good season. How many players have we seen have one good season and then just not be able to replicate it and the form just falls off? That happens a lot. I'm not saying it would happen with Gyökeres, but there's definitely a conversation to be had that it could happen. And, he's come in, he's done really well. Look at someone like Guirassy at Stuttgart. It's been average his whole career. This season, he's been banging the goals in. And suddenly
they've had a winter break, all of a sudden stopped banging in goals.
And he's in the shot window. Now he might not get. I think he probably will get a move, but for me personally, I need a bigger sample size. I just think this is too much of a gamble at £100 million. If we're talking, as you said, if you're talking about 40 or 50 million pounds in this situation, I'd probably be more open to it. But if I'm spending £100 million on someone, then
it's got to be guaranteed.
I'm wanting more than just 6 good months or 12 good months in the Portuguese league. I'm needing more than that.
And that's the problem, is that every striker carries a certain degree of risk with whoever we're going to buy, whether it be because of the price or the experience or the age or whatever. And so whoever we get, it feels like to some degree isn't going to be 100% the finished article unless we literally go for someone like Mbappe. So there's going to be a risk no matter who we choose. And it's just about trying to minimize that as much as possible. I'm not sure Gyökeres does that.
Exactly. And just to respond to this before we move on from this whole topic, to Ashraf, strikers evolve by age, mate. I'm not sure if you're targeted at me or someone in the chat, but if we're going by that, doesn't that mean that Jackson in 2 years' time, when he's going to be as old as Gyökeres is now, will be about 50 times the player? Because look at the level Jackson is playing at now and where Gyökeres was 2 years ago. Just think about
that. I get what you're saying. Some strikers really do. Some strikers, like someone like Girassi, mediocre for their whole career and then suddenly start banging in the goals out of nowhere. Someone who was really good at doing that is someone like Iago Aspas, who's really only hit it at his true heights at the tail end of his career. And that is another reason why I feel like we should be going for an older statesman as a striker. We need someone who's going to, be sure and confident in themselves and isn't going to be affected by the social media noise and all this having the spotlight on them because they've been there before. And it just feels like there aren't many choices that are really going to be able to minimize that.
You're saying we should sign Choupo-Moting?
Oh, yes. Yeah, get him in.
Do you know what's mad though? Like, we need someone like Giroud, but they just aren't around. That's the reality. You look at the sort of the market, and even you want a slightly older striker, like the ones that we need to make the difference that we require. The list is just non-existent. There just isn't one.
Do you think that? Let me ask you this question, both of you guys. Then, do you think then it would be more beneficial to not sign a striker at all in the summer and just bring someone like Lukaku back?
Do you know what? Right, I was talking about this on my channel earlier. Like, I was asked it in the chat, and if we can't get Osimhen and we can't get Tony, if Lukaku wanted to come back and Poch was happy to work with him, and it was like a fresh start, I'll be honest, I would take it, because whatever we think of Lukaku, right, he started well at Chelsea under Tuchel, right, and then the interview and it fell apart, and he just behaved like a whatever. We all know that. But if I look at it, whatever you think of Lukaku, the guy's a goal machine. He scores
even
goals.
For just a season.
Yeah, he scores goals everywhere. I wouldn't be against if we can't get Tony and we can't get Osimhen. Rather than spending 100 million on Gyökeres, I wouldn't be against bringing Lukaku back for a season. And then,
that's what I'm getting at.
And then
he has the pedigree more so.
And then reassessing again. Yeah, we have got someone on the books that is arguably better than everyone we're going for. That's the reality. Whether
at his peak, but it's one about whether he'd come back, and two whether he can perform to that level again. And of course, like if he would even want to work with Pochettino, like you say, because he doesn't press very much, and Pochettino likes a striker who can press really hard.
But if like that was on the table, then for me personally, like I could see Lukaku, like a fully fit Lukaku, and someone that's focused and motivated and wants to be here, with the likes of Palmer's, Nkunku's, etc. around them. The more chances we're creating, there's no reason why Lukaku couldn't score 15, 20 goals in the Premier League next season for us. There isn't. He's got that capabilities to do that.
Isn't the reason that he's in the Serie A, scored 9 goals in 21 games, that Jackson has more goals in the league, or the same amount of goals in the league as Lukaku does, in a way worse league?
But this is Lukaku has proven
because
that
Lukaku is now also 30. Will be 31 by the summer.
But you can't have it both ways. Either you go for someone who's experienced and's done it everywhere, or you go for someone who isn't necessarily as good as what we've got already.
Lukaku is experienced at fucking shit up. He's experienced at that. Like, for me, and I respect everyone's opinion, but to me, it's ridiculous to even entertain it. Now,
I think the bridge is just burned.
I understand Charlie's like, if this is the case and if that is the case, but we all know Lukaku doesn't want to come back. We all know the owners don't want Lukaku to come back, because then they'll look stupid. You might as well have kept him 2 years ago and have saved yourself a lot of money if that was the plan. Do you know what I mean? And also, the whole Poch thing. Will Poch even be here next season? The only way it would make a little bit of sense for me is maybe if you got Conte or Jose, which neither of that is happening. So. Yeah, and to me, and someone said, Lukaku outscoring Osimhen. But he isn't. Osimhen scored 7 in 13, and Lukaku scored 9 in 21. That ain't outscoring, mate. I know in terms of the factual goal number, that is higher, but it's nearly double the games. Obviously Lukaku also scored a lot in the Europa League, but mate, fucking brilliant. You know what I mean? Look at Lukaku. He's acting like
listen, maybe that's what we're going to need.
He scores a few Europa League goals.
Listen, if we get in the Conference League, then we're going to win it with him up top. Because if he's a Europa League goal machine, we got no problems.
We could also just win the Conference League with Broja up front. Don't need to bring Lukaku back.
That's true. Yeah, we could just bring Broja back and just do that instead.
That might save us a lot of money and hassle and depression. But anyways, let's get into focusing on tomorrow's game, because probably we shouldn't have spent quite this much time talking about it. But hey, it's the big topic, isn't it? Let me bring up the wonderful, beautiful Chelsea injury report, because we've had a couple of new names added to the list.
Rehabilitation programs.
Yay, our favorite words. Our favorite words. So obviously you have your usual Lesley Ugochukwu, Lavia, Reece James, Wesley Fofana, Marc Cucurella, even Badiashile has only recently gotten injured. Now obviously Thiago Silva, he obviously had to come off against Crystal Palace, so not exactly surprising. And all of a sudden, also Carney Chukwuemeka is injured. Now let me bring up
I feel so bad for Carney, man. I really do.
Literally, it's just terrible. Let me bring up the quote from Poch from the press conference. On Thiago Silva's injury, minor injury, is out for tomorrow after we need to assess him day by day. So that means he's going to be out until April, because whenever Poch says this day by day, it's never been more than...
I'll be surprised if he was fit for the final.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, he might just play it anyway. Be like, I'm 39. Don't need to be fit anymore for much longer, do I? So maybe that is a thought, but you never know. Good news, though. Madagusto, who asked to be subbed off against Palace, he is fine. So that is amazing news. Also, Chilwell, who kind of dodgily twisted his ankle in a challenge towards the end of their game after coming on for Thiago Silva. They're both fit, which is amazing news. And then kind of the somewhat big news. Robert Sanchez is available. And then, like we just touched on, Carney Chukwuemeka twisted his ankle 2 days ago and is out. I mean, how unlucky can you be? We signed the kid for, what, 20 million or 15 plus 5 or 15 plus 10, whatever it was, in the summer of
the first player we bought.
Yeah, it was
exactly new ownership.
Well, after Sterling, but yeah. Or was it before Sterling? I think after Sterling.
He might have been the first one, you know.
Do you reckon? I just always remember those Sterling photos in LA. That's all I remember. I will never forget those. As we found out, Thomas Tuchel was really about it and thought Raheem Sterling is the solution to all the problems at Chelsea.
And then he played him at wing back.
That's a whole separate issue. But yeah. What a poor guy, man. Like, we signed him in summer 2022. And since then, he's basically permanently been injured or not played.
He's basically been injured the whole season this season, pretty much.
Yeah, more or less.
And a lot of last season as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, a lot of last season he was injured as well. It's been... I feel so bad for the kid, because he spoke about even... I think that report came out a little while ago. He had to even change his running style in order to, help develop him a little bit better. But it can't have done much good. It's weird, if he's twisted his ankle. Clearly, he's still learning how to
obviously, twisting your ankle can happen. It's unlucky. Like, it happens to everyone. Look at me. I literally destroyed my whole ankle walking on the fucking pavement like a moron, right? So it can happen to anyone. And doesn't necessarily mean you're injury prone? No, maybe not. But when it's just all piling up together as it is, it's not flipping ideal. It's not flipping ideal. I mean, Charlie... thoughts on Carney?
Yeah, and
obviously Thiago.
It's just a shame, isn't it? Really, not really much more can be said on it. He had a great preseason. He started the season well, and then obviously suffered that bad injury, missed months and months and months. Come back at a few minutes here and there. Looked promising when he came off the bench against Liverpool. Got the assist for the Nkunku goal, and then we didn't see him. We didn't see him again. And I just think like the business from the first summer. Just looking so bad. Sterling just hasn't worked out. Koulibaly's been and gone. The Bamiyang's been and gone. Fofana has been injured pretty much the whole time. Cucurella's not really worked out. Chukwuemeka constantly injured as well. You look at that summer, the first summer of business, and it's just been dreadful, really.
That whole window was a mess.
Whole window was poor. Players massively overpaid to players, put players on way too much money. And that window now, looking back, horror. It was terrible.
Horror. I mean, I'll be honest. Last summer was also horror. So that maybe a different kind of horror. But see, that is one of the weirdest things about that whole first summer to me, because that first summer tells us that they didn't all along have this low wage structure idea in mind. And I just find that so weird. Like, when did they come up with that idea, and who convinced them
And
so
also,
hard into
Sterling
it?
was.
I can tell you exactly what it was. It's
on.
when, if you remember a little while ago, there was a report that came out. Feliciano and Egbali, they were talking about wanting to lower the OPEX, the operating expenditure of the club. And ultimately, that means wages,
Sure, no. I get that. But why did they only figure that out after giving Sterling £325,000 a week?
I think it's because they gave Sterling £325,000.
Also, though,
a
they
week.
did that, and Sterling was also above the age that we supposedly won't go above.
Again, but that's all from the era when Boehly was being sporting director, and I think we can kind of draw a line under that, to be honest, and call that not the strategy.
And then Koulibaly as well. And
you can obviously, we learned about the Tuchel, like the Tuchel drove that interest. That makes the whole Tuchel departure even more weird when you now find out that Tuchel was the main guy behind trying to sign Sterling.
And then a month into the season, he's gone.
In 2 months later, he's sacked. 6 games into the season.
Aubameyang was even worse. We signed him like 2 days before we sacked him.
But at least he wasn't on 325k a week. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, thankfully, and we've now made the loss on him and moved him on. But Sterling is still here.
That summer of business was just every day that passes, it just looks more and more horrendous.
Exactly, it does. Let me get one other quote from this press conference up here, because it's an interesting one, because Pochettino was asked about Mykhailo Mudryk. Mudryk, the last 2 games, remained an unused sub on the bench in back-to-back games that had only a space of, 3 days? Or did we have a whole week? We did actually have a whole week in between. And on Mudryk, he said, they need to feel sometimes the pain of not playing. If not, it's always so easy and difficult to grow, mature, and improve. It's up to them to reach the level we think they have. I just find this so weird, because he's acting as if Mudryk played every game until a month ago, which has never been
he's not had many minutes, really. Like, I think he's not even played a full 90 this season in the league, I don't believe.
I don't even know about that. But
I don't have a massive problem with what he's saying himself in terms of they sometimes need to feel the pain of not playing. I get that. My issue is that, like, with kind of the second part, is that, he's not really had the opportunities to sort of mature and improve. And every time he's got a run, he then, for some unknown reason, finds himself on the bench after doing well, and then doesn't get a look in for sort of 2, 3, 4 games. And then you almost feel like you're back to square one. I mean, look, we did see with Madueke earlier in the season where, obviously he went out to the party, which was kind of made out to be more of a big deal than it was. But Poch wasn't impressed with the level that he was getting from Madueke in training. He didn't play for a while. He obviously got his head down, worked hard, got back into the team, got opportunities, and then took them. And he's gotten a lot more minutes recently. So maybe, he's perhaps doing the same with Mudryk. I mean, Mudryk doesn't strike me as someone that goes out partying and doesn't train well. We know his work ethic is very good. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. Maybe he's not seeing enough from Mudryk on the pitch, and he wants to send the message home that, he needs to do more. I'm not really sure.
That's what it is.
I can tell you what's going on. He is like, I need to play £325,000 Raheem Sterling.
But he hasn't, though. But he's not started in the last 2 games.
He may not, but he's still picking to bring on Sterling over Mudryk.
Yeah.
At the end of the
game. He played Jackson on the left over Mudryk.
And now he's playing a striker on the wing over both of them.
Although,
we just have an incapable manager who turns out, for 10 years ago, he knew how to develop young players. Turns out he forgot how to do it. Because
for me, I agree I agree with Charlie personally. I think Mudryk is that kind of player who needs a little bit of tough love and needs to be pushed. Because his work ethic is such that he will not allow himself to fail, in my view. It feels like he is that kind of person. You need to kind of push him. He may be inclined to rest on his laurels if he thinks he's already made it. And, he's had a big move to Chelsea. He's on a lot of money, things like that. I think to a certain degree, he needs that. He needs a little needle. He needs a little elbow in the ribs from the manager every now and then. You've done nothing yet. And I think that'll help him push on. I really do. More than it will, hurt him.
I just think Poch needs to say to him, look, you're going to start, like, whether it's tomorrow or not, you're going to start on Saturday. And if you're shit, I'm going to start you next week. And if you're shit next week, I'm going to start you the week after. And I'm going to start you the week after that. and I'm going to allow you to be shit and learn from your mistakes and grow back into games. Because otherwise, we've quite clearly seen, right, that this doesn't work with Mudryk, starting him for a few games, then putting him on the bench, giving him a few minutes here and there. That's not working for him. If that's how we're going to use him, we'd be better off sending him on loan somewhere, go and play every single week, and then come back when you've got more football under your belt, because he's not going to reach his potential and how good he can be by starting a few games, then being on the bench for 3 or 4 games, not playing, and then suddenly you're starting again. That's not going to work. Exactly. So we either just put him in, give him a bit of a go, and because when we've given him a go, he's actually done all right. And, someone's saying that Sterling's performed far better than him. In over double the minutes, Sterling's only got, 2 more goals than Mudryk and maybe 1 more assist. So, he hasn't performed far better than him. In twice the minutes,
performed far better. We are supposedly in the middle of a process and a project. If you're in the middle of a process and a project and you've spent £62 million on a young player who's had very little experience of first-team football and you refuse to send him on loan, we have now learned that we got a loan offer from Bayern Munich. Now, should we have taken that? No, in my opinion. But I think it's good not to take it. But if that's how you want to build it up, you need to play these types of players.
People say that Sterling's... You'd expect Sterling to perform better than Mudryk. This is a guy that was playing in Ukraine less than 18 months ago. Guy that hasn't even played 100 games of senior football. And Raheem Sterling is 27, 28, won everything there is to win in the game other than the Champions League, England International and whatnot, over 100 Premier League goals, etc.
And given all that, you would expect more than 2 more goals.
You would expect him to be performing better than Mudryk. So you're expecting a hell of a lot more from Sterling, given the bar that he set. And yet, we're just not seeing that. What you're seeing from Sterling is what you'd expect to see from Madueke, what you'd expect to see from Mudryk. So I actually think that Mudryk probably isn't... Mudryk can do better, sure. But I actually don't think comparatively he's doing that badly compared to Sterling.
No,
what you expect from Sterling to what you're getting is a far bigger drop-off from what you're expecting from Mudryk and what you're getting.
The thing is, as well, with Mudryk is, for me, what he has you can't teach, and what he doesn't have you can. So it's better to persist with him.
Teaching it to him.
No, that's true. Until somebody teaches him to find a separation on the wing, hug the touchline, and just take the fullback one-on-one every single time, or run in behind for someone like Enzo to play in the ball behind. You've got to use that pace, and it feels like at the moment, maybe to a certain degree, Poch is dropping him because he's not happy with what he's seeing in the games. He's not happy with the way that he's performing, and he wants him to improve. And as a result, this is kind of the reason why.
Exactly. And I don't, like you touched on, boys, earlier, I don't necessarily have a principal issue with putting a player on the bench with this reason. They sometimes need to feel the pain of not playing. It will teach them something. They will grow from it. But what I disagree with is what you said earlier, Oli, in terms of just what I've heard about Mudryk. I think Mudryk is someone that needs to be given every bit of confidence that you can get. You can see with Mudryk, and there's been a lot of talk about Mudryk, that he's shy, that he's struggled a little bit to kind of, come out of his shell at Chelsea. Yes, they've said that it's become better since the summer compared to when he first joined, but you can even see it in his game time. I mean, the comment there was earlier, when he did play for a few games around the Christmas period, just before, obviously, he won us, or he took us into penalties against Newcastle. There was, he scored some goals. He played well in some games, not in every game, but that's what you'd expect from a young player that's not played less than 100 games. You'd expect them to be inconsistent. But like Oli touched on, like Charlie touched on, you need to play them over that, right? You can't say, oh, they need to feel the pain of not playing, when that's all they've experienced in their 12 months at Chelsea so far. He didn't play every game under Potter. He didn't play every game under Lampard. He didn't play every game under Pochettino. He's not even experienced playing every game since leaving Shakhtar. So I don't understand what kind of...
It's why I think a lot of people are saying...
Maybe he's living in his fever dream, he has no injuries, and what he would be playing otherwise. Go on, Oli.
Are you still there, Loz?
Go on.
Ooh. Oh, I'm sorry, man. You skipped over for a second there. I think your internet was bugging. But, and I think that's the reason a lot of people have been saying that he desperately needs a loan, because he needs to build up that experience of playing every week. I just am Chelsea aren't willing to give that to him. So it's a weird situation where they're not willing to, like the manager isn't willing to play him all the time, and the club aren't willing to loan him out. And so you end up in this kind of strange scenario where he's floating in between, and it's not helping either party.
I think what it also shows is that, if we're being brutally honest, Chelsea are shit at developing players. They just are. Like that for me is the reality. There doesn't seem to be any plan on how to develop these players. I mean, not all of them, but certainly the wide players. Like, what is the plan for developing Mudryk to realize his potential? What's the plan for developing Madueke? I don't understand what the plan is here, because we've seen it with a lot, particularly wide players. Where was the plan with Callum Hudson-Odoi? Let's be honest, right? At this point in time, is Mudryk doing any better than Callum was doing? No, he's not. So will he do better? Yeah, I'm sure he potentially absolutely can. But when you look at it, you sell Callum Hudson-Odoi for £4 million and you spend £62.5 million on Mykhailo Mudryk. And right now, you're sort of like, one's no better than the other was. So I look at it and I just think the way that we're developing players is really, really poor. And a lot of these guys, we're going to want to play them and then sell them on for potential profit. Right now, hardly any of the players that we've signed could we sell for a profit on what we signed them for. Literally hardly any.
Gusto and Palmer are the only two.
Those are the only two. Everyone else we've signed,
maybe Petrovic actually, but
yeah, that issue we would get a profit for him.
But what the point stands though, in terms of like these guys that we've signed, like some of them are going to want to get profit from. We're not gonna get it, and this is what these guys are going to realize, that and that's the problem when you build a squad where the age profile is all the same. Like, that's where you're going to be fucked, because you've got players that all need minutes that are taking all those minutes off each other. And ultimately, you end up creating a bottleneck situation, and you're going to have a situation where some of these young players will develop and reach their potential, and others will just fall by the wayside because they're not playing enough. And then we won't be able to make a profit on them. So that's where we're at right now. We've got to have better plans. We've got to use our loan system better, and we've got to find a way of actually developing players, because right now this football club is really poor at developing players.
Literally, we literally are. And I mean, I guess from that perspective, it could be seen as a positive that Chelsea are closing in on the appointment of Josh Marsh from Swansea as loans manager. He'll be active for Chelsea, but also Strasbourg Connection and the other clubs set to be part of the Blue Coat group in the future. It's imminent, as David Ornstein called. So what do we make of that? First of all, he looks a bit like a B-Tech Paul Winstanley in the first place. No, actually, he looks more like Vivell. So we lost Vivell, so we got something that looks like him, which is great recruiting.
I mean, it's a good thing to get a person like this. I mean, there's of course questions of why wasn't there a loan manager before we sent everyone on loan.
That's just not like, it's basically
it was. Well, wasn't it? Makalele was like sort of loans manager, and then he left. I don't know if I know Kudachini is.
I think it was left up to the sporting directors as of late. And ultimately, I guess, they've seen that it hasn't really panned out very well. Santos's loan to Nottingham was a total disaster. Casadei to Leicester was all right at best. We need to be getting more out of these players. And so I do support generally the idea of getting in someone who can just look at the loans and spread it around the Blue Coat group and develop these players. What annoys me is, why did we have to go back to Brighton again for him?
This is the Swansea guy, bro.
This is for Swansea. Okay, well, even still, even from Swansea, do you really want someone from Swansea, or do you want someone from a bit more of an elite club who's used to sending these kind of young players on loan? This guy will be used to sending players on loan to the League One and teams like that.
I'll say two things to that. One, you'll only be allowed to do 6 international transfers from international loans, from this upcoming season. So all your other loans, and because we have 3,000 players, a lot of these loans will have to be domestically. And a person that knows the Championship is, for me, a good thing to have, to be able to get the good loans in a Championship, because they know the clubs, they know where someone could fit in well. So someone knowing the football pyramid, when the other people we have in charge don't seem to know anything.
But you can get someone in from an elite club who does know the football pyramid.
And that's the other thing I want to say. Why do people keep thinking that we can get people from elite clubs? We are a laughing stock. Why would anyone come to us if they're already at a top club? Like if they're in the process of leaving already or there's some change happening, then sure. But if they're settled in a club that's functioning, why would they want to come to us? We're a laughing stock. Look at us.
Well, to be fair though, like I think
fancy it. Why wouldn't they see it?
The way you get noticed, right, is by doing a good job at a lesser club, and then you work your way up. It's almost like this is almost like a promotion, as it were, you know.
Literally.
And like,
ask your Keres how that goes.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
but let's be real, right? First of all, none of us 24, 36 hours ago, whatever it was, none of us knew this position was even available at the club, right? None of us had ever heard of this other geezer, Josh Marsh. And now, suddenly, I'm not saying you guys, by the way, but then suddenly you go on Twitter and everyone is suddenly an expert in loan managers and who this guy is when they never heard of him 24 hours ago. So what's happened to just thinking, do you know what? Let's just, maybe this guy is good. Let's just let him come in and do his work. Obviously, something they've looked at has led them to think that this guy is good. So if he's good, fine. But it's clear that the loan department needs a bit of a revamp, needs someone to come in because the loans have been shambolic this season, most of them. Let's just see what he does. I mean, look, Man United are looking at Jason Wilcox at Southampton. He was at Man City. He went to Southampton as a sporting director or director of football. Very highly regarded. Could you imagine the outrage, right, if Chelsea had been linked with going for Jason Wilcox?
He can't be good. That's essentially the replacement for Joe Shields, isn't it?
He can't be good because he's from Southampton. When are we going to sort of, for me, move away from this thinking? It doesn't matter. I don't care where you come from. If you're good at what you do and have shown a good track record and you're ready for that step up, well, welcome on board. I don't care. Like everyone has to start from somewhere. So, like
for sure, but that is also how you end up with a manager like Graham Potter, who actually couldn't hack it at the big time. So you're taking a risk when you do that either way.
No, I get it.
But if Potter stayed, he would be doing much better right now than Poch is.
Well,
I think so anyway.
I get it. And people say, oh, you know, you look at United and they're being serious now under Ineos, looking to go and get Dan Ashworth. They're looking at that Sam Jules as well at Brighton. You know, they're making...
We are looking at too.
Yeah, they're making good appointments. Bereda from City. Look, they're looking to sort that shit out, right? Good. And like we should be looking to sort that sort of thing out now. And people say, oh yeah, but when you know Jose first came, or the season before, whatever, we went and took Peter Kenyon from Man United as chief executive or whatever. I get it. You know, you can make these hires, but I also think we need to be realistic, right? Can Chelsea go and get people from other bigger clubs? Yeah, they could do. But would those people actually want to come in the situation we're in? And as we understand it from the reports, these guys are going to be reporting into Winstanley and Stewart. So how are we going to get someone of a top caliber from an elite club that actually is probably better than Winstanley or Stewart, but they're going to have to come to this role and they're going to be reporting to him?
Arguably the structure is the problem in the first place. But if we start talking about that, we'll be talking about it all day.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. But that's my point, though, is that I agree that we can go to elite clubs, but I'm not sure that these guys would come in and want to work under Winstanley and Stewart. They're probably better than that. They'd be the sort of guys that should be replacing them. And that's in itself is where the problem is. So I think for me personally is that whilst these guys are going to have to report to Winstanley and Stewart, you're not going to get like top class from big clubs, because those guys won't accept going into a hierarchy that works like that.
There you go. I mean, Jay in the chat is saying that the only reason there's outrage about this appointment is because we're trash. If we were winning, this isn't even a topic of discussion. I'll counter this with this, right? If we were winning and we hadn't fucked up every loan that we attempted this season, we wouldn't even be making this appointment. So, like, you know, yes, there wouldn't be outrage if we were winning, but if we were winning, I don't think there would even be disappointment. I mean, you mentioned the name Sam Jewell there a second ago, Charlie. If we're going to talk about these potential higher up recruiting moves from Chelsea. Chelsea have also made an official offer for Brighton's head of recruitment, Sam Jewell, who replaced Paul Winstanley. But in this case, he's now supposed to come to Chelsea to work under Paul Winstanley.
But what I would say, though, like, two things on this, right? I get it optically. It doesn't look good because of how many times we've gone to Brighton in the last 18 months.
It's just there were other clubs.
Yeah,
go to another club.
Man United
are also bought Brighton and left us alone.
United are also interested in this guy. Ultimately, like, this guy is obviously quite good. He's I think I did some readings. He's also would be a specialist negotiator. He was heavily involved in recruiting McAllister and recruiting Caicedo, in recruiting is it Buonanotte, the guy that's there at the moment. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And in
Ciso, didn't he?
Yeah, and in Ciso as well. I think in the lockdown he learned Spanish so that he could communicate with the South Americans when doing the deals and stuff. And I think with Chelsea looking to increasingly tap into that South American market, probably look to purchase a club in Argentina or Brazil. For me, it kind of makes sense if you have someone with that level of expertise within that area. He wouldn't be coming as a head of recruitment. From what I've read, the job offer was something like it would be kind of a global scouting thing where he'd be in charge of scouting at Chelsea, Strasbourg, and maybe another club if we add it. Plus, he'd be like a specialist negotiator as well. I don't think this would be a dreadful appointment, but if I'm being brutally honest, the guy already knows Dan Ashworth. If Ashworth goes to United, then I think he could well follow suit, or he might just stay at Brighton. Who knows? But look, I'm glad that we're looking to make these appointments because we need them. I'm just wondering, why has it taken until now for us to start trying to make these appointments? Surely they should have been in place.
It's because there's the concept that Winstanley and Stewart were going to be able to do it by themselves, and they can't.
Well, first of all, they can't. But second of all, how many more people do you want to hire in a short space of time? Like, you hire some people and then you give it a bit of time, let these people settle, and then you hire more people. Imagine you hire them all at the same time. Sam Jewell didn't even exist when we hired Paul Winstanley because he only had to replace Paul Winstanley first. Do you know what I mean? So my issue with it isn't necessarily him, right? My issue isn't Sam Jewell, like, especially after what you just said, Charlie. There's a lot of things that sound good about it. And we clearly need a head of, like, a good negotiator because we've learned many times that Paul Winstanley and Laurence Stewart are absolutely incapable at that. But the problem for me is that he would come in below Winstanley and Stewart. And while these two are heading the whole thing, it doesn't matter who we hire. It doesn't matter how good any of the people that we hire are, because if the two people at the top are dog shit, then there's no point below. Like, they're going to be told, yeah, but you can only sign someone that's under 12. And then you can only sign someone if they want less than £2 a week. And then they can only cost a maximum of £70,000 million if they're 15 and from Ecuador. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's none of the strategy makes any sense. So it doesn't matter who we appoint unless the strategy is adapted. Like, it's completely pointless.
It just annoys me about Brighton because, like, I just feel like if the club were really doing their due diligence, they wouldn't be going back to Brighton every single time. You know, like, if we're really doing our due diligence and finding the very best people for the job that we can approach and we can acquire right now, I don't think we go to Brighton 9 times out of 10. We'd be going all over the world. We'd go to Europe. We'd go to other markets as well. Yeah. I understand we want Premier League experience to a certain degree, but to then hire Winstanley and then hire the guy who replaced him is just comical. It's
but totally what I would say, comical. Right? Could you also? I get your point, and I understand the optics of it, but could we also flip it and say, potentially, I'm just putting it out here, that when you're an exceptionally well-run football club like Brighton are, you know, they're one of the best, one of the most renowned, one of the best run football clubs, you know, they do everything pretty well. Is it then not a surprise that, you know, I'm not saying you should go there for every single pick or hire, but it's not a surprise for me that you would want guys that are part of one of the best run football clubs in the league.
But Charlie, we already got everyone from Brighton. and they are still well run. And now we're trying to hire the next group of people. But what does that tell you? They are well run from up above. We are not. Because the people we got from them all failed for us and worked for them. So why would that trend stop?
No.
Like, we're probably going to get the Serbi next as well. Like, literally, just buy Brighton. Do you know what I mean?
No,
just do what Red Bull do in F1 and have a second team. Do you know what I mean? Might as well.
I hear it. I think, look, ultimately for me, like just to wrap up on this bit, like until the structure changes, for me personally, I think there's too many cooks in the kitchen as such. There's too many opinions floating around. What there needs to be, right, is a clear hierarchical structure and a clear chain of command of who's reporting to who and
But does
who
that
ultimately.
matter?
Yeah, no, I think that does matter because right now,
operationally,
when I say
it really
does that
matters.
matter, I'm asking.
Operationally, 100% it does.
No, I get that. It does matter. But why I so snippishly asked, does it matter? Is if whoever the top of this chain of command is an idiot, or even if you don't want me to phrase it that harshly and say their strategy just isn't good, it doesn't matter that if there is a good chain of command or not. Because if we only keep signing youngsters, and if we aren't willing to spend reasonable wages and less wages than Villa and Spurs and every other club around us, we're not gonna go back into the top 4. So, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, that's our minimum as fans, right? That's our minimum expectations that we get back into top 4 eventually. But the way they're acting, that's never going to happen. So what does it matter if there's a good change of command, a chain of command? Like, what difference does it make if the plan is bad?
What we have to focus on first, right, is everyone's so focused about getting back to the top, right? But there's steps for us to take before we get there. Right now, we're a mid-table-ish team. The next point of call has got to be getting back to being a regular top 4, top 6 side. And then we have to build from there. We can't just think we're going to go straight from mid-table to being title challengers. It's not going to happen. We're not.
Do you feel like any of the signings that we're making are really making a big impact on that?
Not right now. Then, not no.
So the whole strategy.
We need to. What we need to do is, we have to focus on getting back to being a top 4, top 6 club first. We're miles off that at the moment. So
exactly, that's what I'm saying. But to me, their strategy isn't bringing us back there. That's my whole point.
Yeah. I get that. I mean, look, we could discuss this all day, but I think operationally, we have to fix up for sure.
Absolutely. Because both Charlie and Ollie need to head off fairly soon. Let's finally, we were supposed to talk about Chelsea or Man City against Chelsea, and went off completely on the topic again.
I think that's the thing is there's not, to a certain degree, how much is there to talk about because we're all expecting to get battered. So
the only problem is I expected to get battered when we played them at home, and all of a sudden we drew 4-4, and arguably we're unlucky not to win.
So expecting to lose 100%.
Yeah, I think we all are. But let's start with this, right? And the goalkeeper. And I'm already going to bring up a new tab again because
the level of head loss I'm going to have at 4:30 tomorrow if I see Sanchez on the team sheet is going to be unrivaled.
I can't wait because no matter which way it's going to go, people are going to be absolutely furious.
I don't think anyone will be furious if Petrovic starts.
There are some people I've seen on Twitter today. Some people have said that Sanchez. I've seen people saying Sanchez is far superior to Petrovic. I mean, I personally disagree with that. But
you should have won Brighton fans.
Yeah, maybe.
I guess. To be fair, maybe half our fans are Brighton fans now.
What should happen?
Maybe we bought them too.
What should happen? I mean, what should happen is that Petrovic plays this game and the cup final, and then FA Cup against Leeds, he put Sanchez in. That's what should happen. But part of me, this is an obvious thing to do, right? But part of me just feels that, Poch might just stick Sanchez straight back in.
That's what I was going to ask you boys now. Because let's do a predicted 11. I think the most likely is that we will play a 4-3-3 rather than, because it's Man City. I mean, maybe we will even do a back 3, but do we even have 3 centre-backs available?
No, it won't be a back 3.
No, it won't be a back 3.
No, I mean, I don't think so either, but you never know.
You'd have to have one of
he's more likely to play
style,
2 centre mids to have a more, compact midfield than he is to play a real 10, in my opinion. But obviously, I could be wrong. But who do you expect Poch to put in goal? You said it there, Charlie.
I think it will be Petrovic. I think it will be Petrovic, but I can't entirely rule out Sanchez going in. But for me, I'm probably 70-30. It'll be Petrovic. There's just a little part of me that thinks Poch could do a shithouse move.
Yeah, I kind of see it the same way. I agree with Charlie on that. Is that he's most like, I think Petrovic has earned his spot, and Poch will know that. But I also think that he does have he has some kind of attachment to Sanchez and as one of the sort of the older players in the team that he might want to bring him in for his experience, I think personally that would be a mistake.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And I agree with you, boys. Maybe I'm more on the 60-40 fence than the 70-30 because, I mean, the last 7
You don't
months
have much faith in him, and that's totally justified.
Exactly. I mean, the last 6-7 months have told me that Pochettino is an idiot. So if there is a 50-50 decision to be made, I expect him to make the wrong decision. So maybe he will play Sanchez. But yeah, I'm trying to manifest shit. But honestly, does it make it like you could argue play Sanchez, he will concede 7 goals, and at least it won't be Petrovic that concedes 7 goals, and it will be Sanchez's confidence that's ruins, it's not Petrovic, and then we could go to a cup final with a goalkeeper that hasn't just experienced conceding half a dozen goals. You know what I mean? So I guess there is that perspective, but yeah, it should be Petrovic, and if any sort of meritocracy exists at this football club, it's utterly ridiculous if Sanchez gets to play.
I agree.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's get to the centre backs. Not much of an option.
Whole back four kind of picks itself, doesn't it?
I think it does as well. It literally picks itself, the back four.
I do agree because
Gilchrist is not going to start and Chalobah is not going to play either. So
no, exactly.
No. So it's Colwill and Disasi as the centre backs, probably Gusto on the right, Chile on the left.
It picks itself. This has to be the back four. Like that's literally there isn't other options.
I would be very shocked if it was anything other than that.
Yeah.
I agree. The only thing that could make it something different is if Poch is waffling and Gusto isn't fit to start. But otherwise, it will.
Yeah, true. Then you'd shift Chalobah or Gilchrist out that way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, Chalobah is a tough one. Obviously, it's the first time he wasn't in the squad again against Palace, but he was an unused sub. So you shouldn't start him now, should he? He was out for 6-7 months.
Hopefully he plays versus Leeds. I would like to see that.
Hopefully. Well, hopefully he comes on as a sub beforehand, but if he does, that probably means we got another centre-back injury. So let's hope he doesn't, I guess. But yeah, the midfield, realistically, also kind of picks itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, Enzo, Caicedo, Gallagher, surely.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course it will.
Especially, especially you can't drop either of Enzo or Gallagher after the last game because they both scored, especially Gallagher with his brace. Caicedo is kind of crucial because otherwise the midfield is going to be Swiss cheese against Man City.
And then this picks itself as well for me.
Does it?
Does it? I think there's a bit more debate here.
Well, Palmer, Jackson, and Nkunku.
So
that was my question. Do you think Nkunku does start?
I think so. I think
he does.
I think he has to now.
I just think that this is we've put ourselves in a position where Nkunku is the player the club and the manager has put out as this savior. And the actual savior is Cole Palmer. And the problem is, unless you play a 3-4-3, they don't both work in the same team while you don't have a proper striker. So
I think actually, do you know what? I'm going to change my mind. I think it will be Sterling, Palmer, Jackson. I don't think Nkunku will start because he hasn't lately.
I agree.
Oh my God! Romeo Lavia is alive and exists. Chelsea have just tweeted a picture of him in training.
Really? I thought he was. I thought at this point,
some sort of training. Yeah. Wow. He does exist.
I was starting to think Romeo Lavia was an NFT or something.
Or an NPC, both possible. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, who do we think plays up front? Let's sort that one first, because Charlie, Jackson, I assume the way you put it,
you Jackson think will play. No, I'd play Jackson.
I think you need someone with the height and the outlet ball.
Okay,
but like it can be fluid and interchange. Like Nkunku can take out that position. Like it's not that wouldn't really be set. But for me personally, I'd have Jackson there, Nkunku left, and Palmer right.
I think you'd probably play. I think the only question is whether it's Nkunku or Sterling on the left. I think personally it'd be Sterling, just because Nkunku tends to be coming on more at the moment than he is starting. And then
I've got a horrible feeling that Poch will pick Sterling to start in this game. But
I think he will as well, especially Palmer and Sterling, both sort of knowing City and kind of knowing the way they would want them to play.
Sterling's done nothing to warrant being in the starting lineup at all.
I agree, but he hasn't all season, arguably, and he still plays.
See, but I think for this game, I think it would make, if you played Sterling, like, obviously I don't think Sterling should be playing, but if you played this front three, I think it would make more sense to put Palmer in the middle, Jackson on the left, and Sterling on the right, because that is better for counter-attacking. And counter-attacking is the only way we're going to do anything.
I
Because
do see your point, but also when we have a player like Palmer or Nkunku playing centre forward, there is no out ball. You can't go long because they're not going to win any headers. And when you do that against Man City, you're going to get penned in. So you're going to go back and back and back and back, and eventually they will suffocate you.
I agree, but I don't think Jackson will win any headers either.
Jackson will win more than Palmer will.
Yeah, absolutely. But
he will contest more aerials, I guess, is what I want to get.
Whether the striker gets ahead to it or not, it's not the decisive factor in whether we win the ball or not. They will win the ball whether Jackson wins the first header or not.
I think it makes more of a difference than you might think.
You know what I mean? Sorry, say that again.
I think it might make more of a difference than you might think, just to be able to take that pressure off. I don't know if Jackson is able to chest the ball and bring it down. Like, we haven't really seen Palmer play much with his back to goal, and when he has, he's been poor, right? So
that's my only issue, though, right? My thinking is, if you're counter-attacking, do you really want Palmer on the wing? I would argue you don't. So if you want Palmer to play, in my opinion, the only logical place is up front. Because if you're counter-attacking, you don't want Palmer as one of your... Do you know what I mean? That's my worry.
I disagree with you there just for one reason, because I think Jackson would be better in terms of holding the ball up to then either on the half-turn turn and go himself, or turn and release Palmer or Sterling off in the flanks. I think if you have Palmer there and Sterling, like Jackson on the other side, I think
that's fine.
It works, but I don't know if it works quite as well.
No, I even agree with that, actually. Like, it's not like I don't think Jackson would do better than Palmer at doing that specifically. But what I think he would be doing worse at is if he does get the ball and then you have two wingers making runs, Palmer would be better at feeding those runs and putting them potentially 1v1 with the keeper. But also, if Jackson doesn't do a good job at what you've just spoke about, wouldn't it be better to have someone a lot faster than Palmer on the right? That's what I mean.
If you're going to do that, just stick Mudryk on the left, surely.
Do you know what I mean? Put Mudryk on the left, Sterling on the right, and then just run. But the problem is, Mudryk will hide behind Chilwell anyway. So what difference does it make?
Sterling just makes the whole attack worse, though, and he just doesn't offer anything defensively helping Chile either. So, yeah, it just...
But if you're playing Nkunku and Palmer on the wings, right, then you don't have any width. Unless Chile
they both come in. They both come in. And against
City, that will destroy us in and of itself.
I'm not sure. Look,
I think whatever way we go about it, the point is, whatever way we go about, especially the front three, we're going to run into issues against that City team, and then unfortunately that means it's going to be up to Pochettino to find a solution to that in the game. Whether he can or not really does remain to be seen.
Yeah.
Exactly. And just to comment on this from wing, it's very early days, but Nkunku isn't involved when he plays. Isn't much involved when he plays.
He was very, very isolated against Crystal Palace when he came on second half.
Yeah, I don't personally really like him up front.
It doesn't work.
Idea. Never thought that. He's an idiot.
It's not his best position at all. And like even the game he started against Wolves, like he had very, very low amount of touches and just wasn't in the game at all. Like, look, I get it. He's hardly played for us. He's still learning how he plays, still learning the teammates, learning the league, etc. I get it. But yeah, he just looks like he just doesn't really know what's happening.
But what we could say is he has scored a few when he has come on. Like, in the terms of the finishing scenario, he does look a cut above.
You know, absolutely. I would agree on that front. But yeah, he just looks a little bit lost at the moment still.
He's another one, a little bit like Mudryk. To get Nkunku good, you need to actually play him. Instead, our manager keeps putting him on the bench.
I just think they're being so cautious with him because they just don't want another breakdown. But yeah.
What difference does it make? If you're not playing him, he might as well be injured.
Well, he's got a point.
Yeah, maybe.
You know what I mean? Like, what benefit do you get out of that? I mean, and that's what I wanted to reply to Wing. It's like, he isn't involved much when he plays. I agree. But the biggest issue is, in my opinion, he isn't playing much. So then those few times that he does get to play, obviously he's not involved because he's never played with these teammates. Because, I mean, half the players around him, Palmer weren't even here when Nkunku played before he got injured in pre-season. Palmer didn't even exist then. And Palmer is now the best standout attacker that he's most likely to have to link up with. He didn't even exist at Chelsea yet when Nkunku last properly played. And I say that because I know he's played a few times, but none of this has been proper in my opinion. But yeah, I think we can probably come to an agreement that this is the most likely team for Poch to pick.
Yeah, I think so.
As much as we maybe don't necessarily fully agree with the front three, I think it will be that. I mean, there is obviously a case to be made for Sterling to play this game because when he played City at home, he proper turned up. When it's a game where he wants to turn up, Sterling is a good player. The problem
and
is
that's what I think Poch will do. He's a man manager first, right? So, at least in theory. So he will be talking to Sterling and especially Palmer and Sterling before this game, going, like, where can we hurt them? And as a result, they will probably play.
There you go. You're giving a much bigger benefit of the doubt than I am. My thinking is he's like, fuck, I don't know how to do this. Maybe Sterling can do something.
Yeah, maybe the ones who played with them know something.
Yeah, exactly. Because I have no idea what I'm doing. So maybe Sterling does. But boys, let's finish this off with a score prediction, shall we? Charlie, why don't you go first?
I think we're going to lose 3-1.
We're scoring. I'll take it.
I think we'll score. City defensively, I know they've still got the third best defense in the league, but they do let in goals and you do get chances against them. So I think we'll get 1.
Okay. Ollie, what about you?
I'm going to go with a 1-0 defeat. I think City probably will win. I don't think we'll score, but I think it'll be closer than people think.
Okay. I'm not going to go with 2. I'm just going to elaborate my thought process first. I think there's 2 options. Either we lose 2-0, like kind of like Ollie said, 1-0 for a long time. We then open up at the end and they get another at the end. Or we lose like 5-2 or 5-1. Because to me, Poch's approach is and also how the players set up. But I think the players will at least try, unless the first 10 minutes go bad and then they completely crumble, which is also possible. But I think the main thing is Poch's approach. Does he try cautiously and just make sure we don't concede too many, but then we won't score, in my opinion? Or does he go for it and then we'll just get battered, but maybe get a couple goals? That's how I think it will go. But I wish Varner was right, even if now for the mood in the fan base and the mood in the dressing room, a draw with City would be good. Mm-hmm. But really, that 1 point more or less doesn't make a difference. It doesn't even matter. So I've seen some people make the case, just rest everyone and make sure everyone's ready for Liverpool rather than trying to do anything tomorrow because we're losing anyway. There is that way to look at it. But, I mean, it's 8 days until the cup final. Or the cup final is on Sunday, right? Not Saturday.
Yeah, Sunday, yeah.
There you go. So
I think even if the strongest team played, like they would have enough rest for the final.
Oh, easily,
exactly. The one thing I'll say is if Nkunku doesn't play tomorrow, I don't think he plays the cup final either, from the beginning anyway. Because when are you letting him get his match sharpness?
Yeah, Pochettino seems to be one to be bringing him on as more of an impact sub at the moment.
I think if Nkunku starts tomorrow, he'll start the cup final. If he doesn't start tomorrow, I think it's unlikely he starts at Wembley.
I agree. Unless, I guess, he comes off the bench and does super well tomorrow, maybe then. But
maybe. That's the only scenario, I think. He would have to really stand out against a very good City team.
Exactly, from a position where we're already losing. Because Nkunku has scored for us, but only ever when we were losing.
Mate, I'm still waiting for that balloon celebration. We've almost waited a whole season to see it. Imagine we don't even see it this season.
Mate, he's probably going to get a helium balloon and try to float off just to run away from Chelsea. But that's it's terrible. Not even a balloon celebration. I just want him to score a goal that actually matters. That would be a start. I mean, but yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up here. Please do check out both my wonderful guests, Charlie, both on YouTube and Twitter. Links in the description, as well as Ollie's YouTube and also not YouTube, his Twitter, and the link to his podcast, to his Twitter, that podcast Twitter, and then there all the links to all sorts of other podcast platforms where you would like to tune in. But ladies and gentlemen, I keep forgetting to tell people this, but hey, it is what it is. Subscribe if you haven't already. That would be wonderful. Hit that like button on your way out. It really does help a lot. And it does also mean a lot. So that would be fantastic. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching. Upwards and onwards. Let's see how tomorrow goes. And we'll see you next time.